What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. I am so excited about today's video because in this video I'm going to be answering a really popular question that comes up in our inbox and on Facebook, as well as recently I started doing garden consultations. If you want to go check out a garden consultation, we do every once in a while a virtual garden consultation. You can check out the time slots that we have available over on our website. They're probably all sold out at this moment, but as I have time slots available, I usually try to do about 3 to 6 per day, depending on how much time I have. And this is something that has come up already. Out of 10 consultations that I've done just this week alone, it's come up twice. So 20% of the time, this question comes up about why plants are growing as slow as they are, or is there a way to speed up plant growth? And so this is a common question because I think a lot of gardeners, when they plant their stuff, if they're new, they don't really realize the time that it takes for a seedling to start growing, or they don't really know what's going on, but they're able to identify that their seedlings are slowing down, or there are signs that the plants are not growing as fast, maybe as they should be. And so it leads the question, what's going on and what's causing it? And so in this episode, we're going to tackle that because I think it's a really simple fix. Well, there's several simple fixes, but it's something that I really want to talk about because I think it's going to take your garden to the next level. All right, let's go. So the first reason why your plants might not be growing as fast as you want them to be is a nitrogen deficiency. So nitrogen is a key growth regulator. It's a nutrient that plants use to produce leaves and green growth. If your soil is deficient in nitrogen, the plants can't uptake nitrogen, and therefore they're much slower. A way that you can tell that your soil is deficient in nitrogen is typically by the plants slowing down in growth dramatically and then slowly turning yellow over time. If you're noticing that the plants slow down and then the newer leaves turn yellow, that's a key sign that you might want to add some fertilizer or compost, something that's rich in nitrogen. You could add things like blood meal. That's a very good source of nitrogen. You could add things like kelp meal. Kelp meal is a fantastic source that's actually plant-based, so if you're trying to grow veganically, you can use that. There's also fish fertilizer, which is just a byproduct of the fish industry, and it's just an emulsified fish that you add in water, so it's a water-soluble nitrogen source. And there's also things that are broad spectrum or kind of like your all-purpose fertilizers. Things like trifecta is another really good example, which is a 5-10-4, and so you're getting 5% available nitrogen both in fast-acting and slow release. And so you can use an all-purpose fertilizer as well, and it'll still do the job. But nitrogen is what you want to focus on for growth, because that's really one of the main growth regulators that plants use. So that's the first reason. The second reason why your plants might be growing slowly is because you just planted them. You know, when you transplant from a pot to the soil, plants go through what's called transplant shock. And you see these seedlings behind me here, these were planted from seed, and so they don't have nearly as much transplant shock as something that was taken from a container, from a grow room. You know, warm, it's nice and sterile, it's very climate controlled, it's absolutely beautiful, it's perfect conditions, and then throw them outside where the conditions can vary by the day or even by the hour, where it might be sunny then cloudy, it's cold and warm, it's raining, it's not, it's very windy, it's not. And so those stresses, as well as soil conditions, the soil might be more wet than the pot it was grown in, or it might be drier than the pot it was grown in. The soil type itself, you might be using a sphagnum peat moss, which has a higher pH, or a lower pH, it's a little more acidic. And you might transplant it into pure compost, which has a pH of 7, which is neutral. And so those pH differences can actually cause transplant shock as well. And so whenever you change up the environment, it takes some time for that plant to adapt. And a plant does not adapt by just continuing to grow. It adapts by slowing down growth and actually focusing on root development. Once it focuses on root development and gets the roots established, that's when it can justify putting out more leaves. And so common sense would say that if the growth stopped and you just planted, it might be focusing on getting its root system established. And that's really all it is. It just takes time for the root system to get established, and you're off to the races again. So don't panic. If you just transplant, that's probably why. The third reason why your plants might be slowing down or stopped growing is because, well, you're just not being patient. I know a lot of gardeners that, even though gardening is a kind of a hobby of patience, and everyone always talks about how gardeners are the most patient people, I would say I know quite a few gardeners, maybe even speaking from personal experience, where they're some of the most impatient people. I know, when spring comes, it's like, I want spring to come because I want to get out there and garden. It's impatience. And you might think that your plants are not growing fast enough, but that might be because you want them to grow at 100 miles an hour, and that's just not the pace at which nature grows. And so it's very important to realize what your expectations are. You know, having grown a garden before, I can tell you, I can decipher, because I've grown many plants before, at the pace in which they should be growing. You know, a tomato, if you plant a tomato, a newly planted seedling in the ground that has, say, like 4 sets of adult leaves, you know, a nice 4 to 6 inch tall tomato plant there. That plant is pretty well established. Once it goes through its transplant shock phase, where it's going to slow down growth, it's going to get established like we just talked about, it can start producing leaves. And at that stage, you should be looking at a new set of leaves coming out about every 2 weeks. And that's, you know, a new set of leaves coming out. Those are going to grow, and then it's going to alternate, and it's going to put out a new set of leaves. And tomatoes, they do that, where they alternate sets of leaves. And so if things are slowing down from what you're used to, yeah. But if you're growing a garden for the very first time and your plants are healthy, they're nice and green, you know, you're not seeing any signs of nutrient deficiencies and other forms of plant stress, you might just not be patient enough. And that's okay to admit. That's okay to admit. The fourth reason why your plants might be slowing down or stop growing is because of the soil. So we just talked about how when you transplant a plant from a container into the soil, it goes through a transplant shock. Well, sometimes you plant from seed, like these lettuce and radishes behind us here. And what can happen is, if the soil is compacted or very heavy in clay, and there's not a lot of organic matter, what can happen is the soil can actually compact and constrict air. And plants need to breathe like you and I do. And so if your soil is compacting and constricting that air, it can actually suffocate the roots. And roots, because they need air and they're not able to get air, they're going to be stressed. Also, compacted and compressed soil holds onto water, lots of it, too much of it in fact. And if you have too much water in the soil, that water can actually cause root rot as well. And the root rot, not only does it suffocate the air, but it also breeds harmful bacteria, anaerobic bacteria, which will eat away at plant tissue, root tissue, and that can cause the plant to not only lose its roots, which you need to be gaining roots in order for the plant to grow, not losing roots, but also root rot also affects how much nitrogen and as well as other nutrients can be uptaked as well. So sometimes, if the soil is very compacted and it's very wet and very anaerobic and compacted, you might see some yellowing of leaves, you might see some stunted growth. And a lot of times people say, well, it's a nitrogen deficiency, and they just keep fertilizing, but the problem doesn't really ever go away. And so that is something that you really want to look at, is just how compacted the soil is. I always say that if you can't take your finger and comfortably poke it down to your first knuckle, I guess maybe your second knuckle. I'm not a biologist. I'm 1 knuckle, 2 knuckles, 3 knuckles. You're the middle knuckle, the middle of your finger. If you can't stick it down comfortably to the middle of your finger without hitting any hard compacted soil, you're usually fine. If you find some resistance there, it's not the end of the world. You know, if your finger goes down and you hit some hard compacted soil going on the way down, it's not the end of the world. It just is a clear sign that your soil might need some more organic matter amended in. You might need to come back later on in the season and top dress with some compost. You might need to, in the fall, bring in some fresh compost and just refresh the bed. You know, it's not to say if you already have plants planted to rip them all out, but if you basically take your finger and it's like you're poking the concrete driveway that you park your car on, well, you might have an issue there. You know, or if the soil is very compacted, it's cracked in the summertime when there's not a lot of rain, it's very discolored, it's very gray, very kind of muted in color, and it doesn't look very vibrant. It's kind of chalky, might be kind of dusty. Those are other signs that your soil might be kind of poor quality. And the fifth reason why your plants have stopped growing is because of, we just talked about this, but it can happen even in good soil, you're overwatering. Now, like I talked about with clay and heavy compacted soil, what you find is that soil has too much water in it. But the same exact thing can happen in beautiful compost or in potting mix. You can overwater your plants. You can kill them with kindness. And too much water leads to, as we mentioned, root rot. But because you might have good soil and still get root rot from overwatering, that's why this is the fifth reason why your plants can be stunted or slowing, is because you're basically killing off those roots and you're preventing the plant from uptaking nutrients. And it's basically saying, look, I don't have a snorkel. I was not meant to live in water. I need to dry out before I can grow again. It causes a lot of stress. And so because the plant can't just get up and walk away and move, it basically has no other option but to just try to kind of shrink down its root system, get away from the water, and that causes the plant to stop growing. So that's the 5th reason why your plant can slow down and stop. Basically, just too much water. Now the 6th and final reason why your plants might be slowing down or stop growing is because of the temperature. It might be either too cold or it might be too hot. If it's too cold, plants, they try to go dormant, they try to survive, and they don't grow very well in cold conditions. Plants don't really grow that much in weather under 40 degrees. In fact, most plants, like tomatoes and peppers, will stop growing altogether, and they may even die in weather that is colder than that. And so a lot of your plants will actually kind of shut down, they'll slow down. Things don't, they don't metabolize as fast the energy that they're producing from the sun. And so they just don't grow that fast because everything is kind of becoming sluggish and slowing down. On the flip side, it might be too hot. And in this case, plants slow down because they're trying to conserve energy in the form of water. So plants, in order to grow, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of water. And if they're very hot, they know that the temperature leads to dehydration, and dehydration can be a cause of death. So plants actually will stop growing and slow down. And that's why a lot of people in the middle of summer, July and August, will write to us and say, my tomatoes have stopped producing, or my peppers have stopped flowering altogether, or my beans, they look very healthy, but they haven't put out any beans at all. And I simply say, what's your temperature? Because if it's over 85 degrees, generally 85 to 90 degrees is kind of that threshold where most plants will stop flowering, stop really growing, conserve and kind of shut down and wait for the weather to cool down. And that's when they start growing and producing again. And then things are kind of just back to normal, and they don't really ever miss a beat other than that period of time when it's too hot. So it can really be temperature based as well why your plants have stopped growing. And final bonus reason why your plants might be slowing down, this is just one that I thought I'd throw in here, and that's because the plant is nearing the end of its life. So obviously when we grow things and they have a maturity time, so it could be an onion matures in 110 days. A tomato matures in 85 to 90 days. You have things like lettuce that matures in 45 days. You have all these different maturity times. And a lot of times people, they don't really take that into consideration. And a plant, when it matures, it's like me. When I am fully mature, I'm not looking at growing anymore. I am pretty much, my body is the tallest I'm going to be, thank goodness, because I'm done. I'm done buying new size shirts. But when you stop growing, you don't think that there's something wrong with you. I mean, if you grew every single year of your life, there might be something wrong with you. On the flip side, there might be something wrong with you if you grew every single year of your life. And so once you hit peak maturity and you grow to your biological potential, there's not really an expectation that you're going to be growing. And so one of the things you want to really look at is, how long have you been growing that plant? Is that plant mature? Is that plant ready to give fruit rather than grow more foliage? And so it's just something that you want to consider, because I know a lot of people worry about that, and it might just be the natural course of that plant's life. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to throw a like up there. It really would help me out. It would help spread this video around. And let's hit a target of, let's see if we can hit 4,000 likes on this video. It's just a lofty goal, but let's see if we can do it. I appreciate it, you guys. Remember to subscribe if you're not yet already. We have a lot of fun, and the fun's just starting, so make sure to subscribe for more videos. Hit that like button and ring the bell for the notifications so that when we upload a video, you're notified. All right, grow big or go home, everyone. We'll catch you later. See ya. Bye.